And look at what's happening now.
Do you think Rishi Sunak's a populist?
Well, he appoints Suella Braverman as his Home Secretary, and he doesn't mind when she does all this Rwanda nonsense. If he did mind, he wouldn't have her there, and he wouldn't let her do it. So I think he's basically, if I can use a phrase that's fairly well known on that side of the political aisle, I think he's trying to have his cake and eat it. He's trying to be the sort of serious grown-up guy in the room, but he's allowing this stuff to happen. And look, if you watch him when he first became Prime Minister, and it was so obvious to me that we're going to try and do this narrative. Johnson was a terrible human being. Suddenly, Liz Truss was an aberration. The grown-ups are back in charge, Sunak and Hunt. And since then, if you watch his conduct at Prime Minister's questions, he's not that far off what Johnson was like. Lefty lawyers. What's a lefty lawyer? We have lawyers. Lawyers take cases, lawyers defend people, they prosecute people. A lefty lawyer is somebody that doesn't believe in all this anti-woke stuff. He's still on the woke thing. I say in the book, I haven't got a clue what this woke stuff means anymore. It's just everything that somebody on the right disagrees with, you're woke,
But
So I think he has got populist
But
streak.
okay, if I take a more benign view, and put it to you, when you and Tony Blair and Brown, when you all went into number 10 in 97, you had such a huge landslide. You could do it the hell you wanted. You could put whoever you wanted in cabinet.
No.
But do you not see him more as a politician who is constrained?
Oh, he's constrained. Totally.
So it's not. He might not want Suella. I don't know if he does or doesn't, but he might not want Suella
Rory
Braverman
Stewart,
there, but he's had to do a deal.
Yeah.
Is that what Rory? Because
Rory Stewart thinks he wants to get rid of her. But listen, the other thing is that I can remember back in 1997, and let's be honest, the majority was bigger than we expected. Okay, I can remember him being in Sedgefield on the night of the election. We were watching the telly. Tony hates watching the telly, right? But the telly was on in the background, and it was like we were watching the telly. It was good. I remember it was when Michael Forsyth went in Stirling, and it was like Labour gain, Labour gain, Labour gain, Labour gain, Labour gain. And Tony looked at me and said, "What the fuck is going on? No, this is ridiculous."
what did you think you were going to win by? What was your take? Can you remember?
Well, I am a professional pessimist. I say in my diaries that on the night before the election, I'll never forget this. My son Callum phoned me up and he said, "Are we going to win?" And I started crying because it was the we. He said, are we going to win? And I thought, my kids have neglected and haven't been home for months and all the rest of it. So at least he feels part of it. And that was the first time.
Like he still loves me.
And that was the first time I sort of allowed myself, and I said, yeah, we are. We're absolutely going to destroy them. But even then, I didn't think it was going to be that big. I thought 3 figures maybe. But I'd gone through the whole campaign telling everybody we can lose this. And you have to do that. You have to think you can lose, otherwise you stop doing the things
you were so far ahead in the polls.
I don't care.
I mean, I went, and because I've just done the local elections, 1995, I mean, Blair, you were like 25 points ahead at that set of local elections. I mean,
I know.
It was insane. You were like at 54%.
I know.
How could you have thought?
Because you have to think that, otherwise you get complacent. And I can remember once we were in a hotel in Luton, right? It was a tough campaign. We were in a hotel in Luton.
Did you win Luton?
And
I should shut up.
And the Daily Telegraph phoned me up and said, we've got a poll tomorrow. I can't remember the number. It was a ridiculous number. You're 38 points ahead in the polls or whatever. And I said, that is a rogue poll. If I were you, you're going to absolutely destroy your own credibility if you even run it. Our private polls show nothing like that at all. This is a lot closer than you think. And so you have to think like that. And the point you make as well about, we felt we could do anything. The point I'm making is that I remember Tony saying to us, the majority will make people think that we're going to ride roughshod over everything. We can't. We've actually got to be more careful, not less careful. And that's what I think is so amazing about this lot, honestly. I was talking the other day to, it was a civil servant who was telling me about, it was somebody who works in the Justice Department and said that, Raab, however bad you think it is worse. These people, no, seriously, she said, these people are terrible. And the special advisors, they treat all the civil servants like shit. They're vile. They don't know anything. They think politics is a game. And one of the things I'm proudest of, actually, and I do say in the book, by the way, politics isn't just elected politicians. You know, civil service is part of government. It's important. Campaigning, political parties, they all matter. But we were very, very conscious of that. I'm very proud of that. No civil servant who ever worked for me ever came out and said some of the things that the journalists said at the time. None of them.
But in the end, there was an inquiry into Raab. There were 8 separate charges of bullying. 2 were upheld by Tory, the KC that investigated it. And he was forced to resign. So
Yeah, but the culture is, I mean, what was right up until then. Look, I don't know Raab that well, but, you know, you heard the stories so often, so repeated. You must have been hearing them the whole time. And it's a culture. And so when you go back to look, Johnson was terrible in so many ways, and it does come from the top. The one thing you know about, and I've seen this with Tony, you know, the culture comes from the top. So when let's take Partygate, okay? None of the people who worked for me, worked for Jonathan Powell, worked for any of us, none of them would have dared have a social event inside Downing Street at the best of times, let alone during the middle of a pandemic. Just would not have happened because it's unprofessional. It's wrong. And so that's a culture, and that comes from leadership. And I think if you're Sunak at the moment, and okay, I'm not pretending he's as bad as Johnson, but you know, he is letting these people loose. He is letting Suella Braverman say what the hell she wants about all this policy stuff.
I know. I just wonder whether that stems from political authority, because he's a guy that lost the leadership race with the members.
For sure.
He became Prime Minister because Liz Truss crashed and burned.
Correct.
He was then appointed by the party.
Correct.
And so you know how it works.
I'm not saying it's not difficult for him, but I tell you what, the one thing, I honestly think that you get strength in leadership by standing up to people, not by pandering to them, okay? Now, you don't do it willy-nilly the whole time. And I accept Tony had massive authority through a majority, he was popular in the country, all that stuff. But I honestly believe if Sunak actually just stood up and said, I mean, even Rees-Mogg said yesterday, there's no way we can change the leader again. We're toast if that happens. So he's actually got more authority and strength than he realises, I think, for now. And he's got these people all noises off the whole time anyway. I really honestly believe if he were to come out and say, look, we got in a mess because of populism. That's why we're in this mess now. I'm not going down that road. I'm sorry, Suella, you just pushed it too far. You got to go. Go and live on the back benches and we'll see where you end up.
Well, let's go back to polarisation, populism and Brexit, because in a recent interview I did with Jeremy Hunt, I challenged him about the economic effect of Brexit. And this was on the back of the Office of Budget Responsibility. After the budget, they said there will be a long-term hit to the economy. It will be 4% smaller. And he said, I don't accept the figure. And he said, I don't accept the figure because there are externalities that we can bring about that will make that figure less damaging, and there's lots of Brexit upside. And
and do you think he believes that?
I don't know if he believes that or not, but
he doesn't.
It's not my job to decide whether it's my job to ask the questions. But part, as journalistically, part of the difficulty for a journalist is we're not there to make the argument. We're there to observe the arguments and challenge the politicians. But Starmer has basically cleared the pitch. It's like, let's not talk about it. Let's just not talk about Brexit. Let's forget it even happened, that we could have taken a different approach politically. Could there have been a different approach in terms of post-Brexit trading arrangements or something?
Which they could.
Which there could have been. The Conservatives, for their reasons of sovereignty, etc., they chose not to take that route. And then Starmer just chose to zip it. What's going on? What's
going on is that I was thinking of Harold Wilson there. I'll tell you what's going on. I'm going on.
Do you know what? Yeah, it's good, this.
Well, that was a good one. Harold, he was a real operator. No, I'll tell you what's going on is he doesn't want Brexit to be at the centre of the election debate.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that. He doesn't want, he's absolutely, I might wish he hadn't have dived in so quickly, but he's absolutely saying we're not revisiting the referendum. But so that's fine. That's his position, and he's entitled to do that. But I did this speech I did last week about Europe. I actually made the point. I think that I quoted Wayne Gretzky, the ice hockey player. He said, "I skate to where the puck is going, not where it's been." Right? The puck was over there. The puck was over there, and it was will of the people. And the puck was over there, and it was, we're going to make it work. And the puck was over there, and it's like, there's going to be lots of upsides, we hold all the cards, blah, blah, blah. The puck is now over there, and people think, in the main, the thing is a complete shit show. And Labour are kind of here, make Brexit work. And the point I made is I think that you can try and make Brexit work, but you've got to be honest about the fact that it is damaging us. And honestly, Jeremy Hunt, this is back to your point about have we got the grown-ups back in charge. Jeremy Hunt knows that that is not true. And what's the point of having the OBR? The OBR was set up by a Conservative government to give independent analysis of what's happening inside the Treasury. So if he doesn't believe it, why has he got them in there, right? They are analysing his numbers. So I think that what I want Labour to do, and I actually think this will be politically sensible, popular, and it will help them deal with the inevitable questions you guys are going to throw at them through the whole campaign about Brexit. I think if they were to say, and this is not exactly what I want, but let me just say I think this is what they could do. We accept the result of the referendum. We accept that we're not revisiting it anytime soon, not least brackets because the Europeans wouldn't have us until we're settled on this nonsense anyway. However, the Brexit as delivered in the TCA, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, all that stuff, is not working as promised. It is doing real damage to the economy, to our society, to our culture, to our standing in the world. Those bits that are doing that damage, we are going to have to revisit, and that will involve some sort of discussions, negotiations with the European Union. That's all you've got to say.
You said in an article on May the 11th, you said, I understand his reasons for not going further. Mm-hmm. What are his reasons for not going further? Is it because he thinks he'll get killed by the Conservatives if he does?
They're going to try and kill him anyway. No, it's the reason I gave, that he doesn't want Brexit to be the dominant narrative of the election campaign. He wants it to be about this lot have got to go and we can be better.
Is it because if he thinks that if there's any perception of his backsliding, he might jeopardise winning back parts of the country that were very pro-Brexit and already have suspicions of him because he was Mr. People's Vote and have a second referendum? I think, there's a little bit of that. But you see, I mean, I write a chapter in the book about the People's Vote campaign and how that imploded and what have you. I don't look, I go to the Red Wall. I hate, it's one of those things that's become a kind of monolithic view, right? I was up in Burnley last weekend when we won the title. You probably know about that. It was a happy day for the world. And, you know, honestly, if you listen to the way that a lot of our media talk about places like Burnley and Accrington and Blackburn, it's like you're walking around the place and they're all in their clogs and they're all wearing their flat caps and they're all saying, if you ever touch my Brexit, I'm going to absolutely... They're coming up to me and saying, what the fuck is going on? This is a disaster. You know, it's the same as here. It's like this. We're doing an event on the podcast in Harrogate tomorrow. We're going to talk about the North-South divide. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many mythologies. There's more poverty in London. There's more wealth in London, but there's also more poverty. The North is not some sort of monolithic part of England that's all sitting there desperate for Brexit. They're desperate for the same as everybody else. They want the cost of living crisis sorted, they want the public services fixed, and they want the country to stop feeling like it's completely stuck. And that's why I think that Brexit is part of what's made us stuck. But Keir's right not to want to, you know, I give him this. I wished, it took us a long time to persuade the Labour Party to back the People's Vote campaign. They did in the end probably pay a price. Because Johnson managed to get the election brought forward, the Lib Dems and the SNP fell into his trap, Labour had to follow, and he won the campaign on Get Brexit Done. But that turned out just to be another set of lies. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question on this and then move on, because when you talk to Labour politicians now, be Starmer or Reeves or David Lammy, and you ask them about what would your Brexit policy, you say that you want to fix some of the harms caused economically. Is that revisiting a customs union? Is that a Norway-style deal? Is that the single market? And they basically say, they're going to make incremental changes, if you like, around things that are kind of low-hanging fruit, but they're not going to fundamentally revisit the relationship. Do you, number one, do you disagree with that? And number two, do you think it's because this electoral cycle, it's just politically impossible to do it?
Look, I think the customs union is incredibly difficult because it doesn't, you revisit freedom of movement. But look, I say in the book, it's quite something. Just think about this. When we fought the referendum, it was a red line for both Remain and Leave. We were not leaving the customs union, the single market. Now, so they break the promise on that, we leave them, and now it's a red line that we don't even think about going back into it. That's what I mean about the madness of our political situation. But there's loads of stuff you can do. Look at, there's not a single scientist or researcher who doesn't know that we've got to get back into Horizon somehow. Yeah. We've got to get into that. We've got to get back into Erasmus somehow. We've got to revisit some of this stuff. We've got to repair the cultural damage that's done. We've got to get better trade relations. We've got to be able to sort out the stuff at the border. That is stuff that I think can be done. But it's not being done in part because we've got ideological stance in the Tory government where they refuse to say that anything's going badly. And then you've got the French in particular. Look, I know Macron, and Johnson lied to his face, right? Lied to his face. And that is going to take a lot of repairing. So once you get powers like that who feel they genuinely can't trust you, that's very, very difficult. They could sort out this boats thing. They could sort it out with goodwill on both sides. But there's very little goodwill.
Sunak's making some...
He's trying, but look at what he did in Northern Ireland. I mean, all that ballyhoo. I remember, I watched it on Sky News, right? The Windsor framework, and you got the helicopter following the car treatment, right? You normally get that in massive historic moment. I'm thinking, I'm going to believe this when I see it, right? And look what's happened.
Well, actually,
haven't got the institutions up and running.
I felt over cynical on the news at 10 that night because it was framed as this massive success, and I said it's only a success if he can sell it to the domestic politician.
Well, it's only a success if you can get the institutions up and running. That's the only success. And it hasn't happened. Yeah. So I think he's trying, but, he's not succeeding. And I'm not buying the Sunak thing. I'm really not. I'm just like, And fancy, you pick your first game of the season to go and watch Southampton. You watch them get relegated. I mean, that is,
It's a bit mean. That was a bit mean.
Was that mean? Sorry.
That was a little bit mean.
Was it? Sorry. Okay. And the hoodie, what's with the hoodie thing? I mean, wear a jacket or wear,
I don't mind the hoodie.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. All right.
Come on. Now,